Some major developments are shaking up the global fertilizer landscape, from policy moves and shifting trade flows to unexpected buyer activity and new geopolitical twists. I'm Johanna Bota, and here to break down what's happening, why it matters, and what it could mean for the months ahead is Josh Linville, VP of Fertilizer at StoneX. Welcome back, Josh.
Thank you. I thought we were going to have a quiet December, and yet, as today's video is going to show, that is anything but the case.
Exactly. So let's start with the CBAM rates, which were leaked earlier this week, well before the EU's official announcement. Now, they're coming in much higher than expected. How do you think that importers and producers will overcome these new barriers?
Yeah, and actually, now that we're doing the video, there's been a little bit of change. It looks like those rates are now confirmed. That is now part of what is going to be put out to the marketplace. And the importers do have to be worried, right? There's some pretty heavy-handed rates that are being put on urea imports, UAN imports, and hydrous imports. So that's going to change the structure of the market. And unfortunately, for European-based farmers, this raises your costs. This is the same as anybody else in the world. If you put a rate out there, typically speaking, the one that put the rate on is the one that's going to ultimately pay the price. So we are very much expecting that European nitrogen values are going to increase because of this situation. The unknown part of it, and we're still trying to research this, obviously this is a massive document, is whether these same type of rates / penalties also apply to European-based nitrogen production. If it does, well, this whole structure moves the entire nitrogen market higher on imports and domestic production. But if there is a carve out that says domestic producers, if you do this and this and this, you will be left alone, this could have a situation that starts bringing some of that offline nitrogen production back online. You bring up the entire price structure of it. Obviously, Dutch TTF values have been low. We could see a situation where we start staring down the barrel of a global market that has Europe back to normal production. A lot of road still ahead of us, but something we're watching.
Definitely worth watching. Now, in separate news, over the weekend, the U.S. announced that it was lifting sanctions on Belarus's Potash sector in exchange for 123 prisoners. What should we expect from this development?
This was a very big story that honestly we don't see a whole lot of impact on the marketplace. And people are surprised by it. Like, wait, Belarus is one of the biggest exporters in the world. Why wouldn't this be a big deal? Well, for starters, when you look at before the Russian invasion, before Belarus allowed Russian troops and military to use their land to attack Ukraine from the north, Belarus was a major exporter. However, only about 5% of the U.S. imports of potash came from Belarus. It just isn't a major thing, even in the best of times. So we don't think that's a major impact. And from a global standpoint, okay, that's a step forward, of course. But ultimately, what Belarus needs is to make up with Lithuania. That is their typical export flow. They would produce it in Belarus, they'd ship it up and through Lithuania to their deep sea ports, and they'd load vessels and send them out to the world. I believe, and I'm going off memory here, but it was February 2022, Lithuania said, you know what, we side more with the West. You have gone with Russia. You have illegally invaded Ukraine. So as a result, you're shut off from us. We are closing down the border. We are seizing your assets. You will no longer use Lithuania to move your tons out to the world. Belarus has done a better job of moving tons into Russia and things like that, trying to find new export flows, but it has still impacted it. That is the bigger story that we're still watching that does not have a conclusion yet.
I understand. So let's move to phosphates now then. China recently announced that it was freezing all further exports until August 2026. What's behind this decision and how disruptive could it be for the global market?
We think it's a decision. They're just continuing this pattern of making sure there's ample domestic supplies and lower domestic values. We think the domestic demand is higher from an agricultural standpoint. Again, China is a country that is trying to cut itself off from the world. It's almost as if it's preparing for something. And one of those things you do is try to grow more food. Well, how do you grow more food? You put more fertilizer on it. So we think that's part of the equation. We think that, when you look at battery manufacturing, phosphate is now a big base. It's the new technology people are using. So big manufacturer there. We think industrial demand is rising. And ultimately, they just want to make sure they're keeping more tons at home. So what does this mean for the market? And I will say we're at the end of the year. I've been doing a lot more looking back at 2025 and figured out, okay, what did we get right? But more, what did we get wrong? And our Chinese story for 2025, we were absolutely right. They are typically the world's biggest exporter, 8 to 10 million tons. And we focused on they're only going to export 4.5, 5 million tons this year. We still believe that's true. But the timing of when those exports flowed, when you look January through May, they were not exporting hardly anything for phosphate, and global values rose. If you look from June through October, which is the last data that we have, they exported a decent chunk. They exported normally during that period of time. Global values fell. So now here we are in December. We expected November exports will be slower. We think December will slow even more. And now the government is saying, hey, we very well may not let exports go until August. That means the world's largest exporter, the largest manufacturer, is talking about not exporting basically November through August, almost an entire year. It's a very, very supply tightening event that everybody around the world needs to take a look at. One of the things we're already talking about is a lot of farmers around the world are sitting there looking at fall and spring pricing and say, it's too high. I'll wait. I'll cut back. If I have to hurt my yield, but because of it, so be it. I'll do better next fall. With China doing what they're doing, better next fall may not be part of the equation. I'm not saying it can't be, but it's something we are watching very closely. This could be a huge event for global phosphate markets.
Yeah, a bit of a shock China gave us there for a Christmas present. And finally, in a move that frankly surprised both me and the market, India has suddenly announced a massive 1.5 million ton urea tender. Why did this come out of nowhere, and what does it mean going forward?
Yeah, so it's important to note the fact that they're tendering is not a surprise. We knew that they needed to do another tender. However, we thought that they were going to wait until second half January. Uh, One of the big things we've been seeing and we've been hearing is that Indian ports are congested. They bought so much urea in such a short amount of time, they can't move it fast enough. Ships are waiting. They're stumbling over themselves trying to get to the port, trying to get to the dock to unload and get it dispersed throughout the country. We really thought they'd continue to drag their feet, let them work out the supplies that are already coming, and then start fresh in 2026. So yeah, woke up I think it was Tuesday morning, yesterday morning, and all of a sudden we had the announcement, and they were coming back, and it's like, wow. Now, important to note, this shipment window goes through February 20, so this does disconnect it from the tons that are coming now. That should help
Okay.
alleviate that. But the reasoning behind it, number one, there is a need. Obviously, India is still a net importer, regardless of what people think. They need to buy it in tons. So let's go ahead and get ahead of that so they don't get into a supply situation. There is a undercurrent rumor that this has to do with Indian elections. Obviously, India being the world's largest democracy and a lot of their voters being tied to agriculture, they want to show their voting bloc, hey, we are continuing to make sure that we got enough supply. We make sure we got the good pricing for you guys. So by doing this tender, it's a very good look for that agricultural voting bloc.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Josh, thank you again for breaking all that down for us. And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. For more financial content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.